for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the fall!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. LaBita.tv. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Tuesday, August 15th. How is everyone doing tonight? I'm doing good, and I hope you are too. The Sick Podcast brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, named by the Financial Times as one of America's fastest growing companies. In 2023, they've been recognized by the Globe and Mail as a top growing Canadian company for over 2 years in a row now. Actually, as a matter of fact, I spoke to their very own Sean Girard earlier today. He's a busy man. I love that guy. They work with some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies, providing end-to-end logistics services. Join a winning team and check out Energy's career page for available opportunities. If I was you, I would want to work for Sean Girard and Mike Cinquino. Join the Energy team. Also brought to you in part by La Bite ATB, brewed in Quebec, a winner of a dozen international awards. La Bite ATB offers quality microbrewery beers made with some premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bite ATB, embrace your true nature. And brought to you in part by Playground, where I've been there a couple of times in the past week. And will I go again? Maybe. On Sunday night, we'll see. Open 24/7. Drinks are always free while you play. Over 600 machines, daily promotions, including Bust the Bank Pirate Edition with a $100,000 weekly top prize every Sunday and a $1 million top prize at the grand finale on September 10th, located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. It is Playground. Earlier today, we were waiting for it to happen. We kind of thought it was going to happen when 9 days ago, Kent Hughes made a deal with the Pittsburgh Penguins and reacquired Jeff Petry. And a lot of people were saying to themselves, what's going on here? Is Petry going to play for the Montreal Canadiens again? And those who were using some common sense said, no, it's going to be some asset management. And they were just trying to part ways with Mike Hoffman's contract, and chances are Petry won't play here. Mind you, some today are saying, weren't they better off actually keeping him, raising his value, and then trading him? It's something we're going to discuss for sure. But at 1:44 p.m., the Montreal Canadiens made it official. Jeff Petry traded to the Detroit Red Wings. In return, the Montreal Canadiens obtained Gustav Lindström and a conditional pick, fourth-round pick in 2025. The Montreal Canadiens have retained 50% of Jeff Petry's salary. One guy who's in the know when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens, and he's on top of everything, especially Jeff Petry, because he told us, he's close to the situation. He told us that the last time we spoke to him, which was, when was it? Not this past Monday, but the Monday before. Eric Engels of Sportsnet and Sportsnet.ca. What's going on?
What's up, Tony? How are you?
Very, very good. Is that the same shirt when we talked last time, but it actually looked lighter? And today, because of the lighting in your house, it probably looks darker? Is that it?
No, it works with the lighting here, but this shirt is actually black. It looks purple.
The shirt is black?
I know, right?
Are you serious with me right now?
It might just be the lighting settings on my computer. I have no idea.
That's unbelievable. The shirt you're wearing
That's why,
is black.
I write for a living and you do podcasting. I'm no technician.
Wow. You would never think that the shirt that I'm wearing tonight is actually purple, would you?
No.
No, well, it's not. It's black.
I assure you this one is black, but it doesn't look that way.
All right, my man. Okay, so anyway, we got that out of the way. I know that you were on the Zoom call with Kent Hughes earlier today when it was going down. I unfortunately was not on it because I had a planned deep tissue sports massage That I had with my buddy over at Optimal Stretch Clinic, 4710 St. Ambroise in Point St. Charles. And they stretched me out pretty good. So, but I know you're on it. And tell me, before we get to it, your thoughts.
Ken Hughes really did something good for Jeff Petry here. I think it must have been a difficult situation calling up Jeff Petry, like you said, 9-10 days ago and saying, hey, like, I know I was probably the last person you expected to hear from. And we had an opportunity for our club, and that's why we made this decision. And, I think Jeff Petry, for a very long time, the Petry family have likely wanted to be in Detroit. And, I think Kent Hughes could have traded him to a couple of different places, especially if Jeff was willing to be flexible with his no trade list. But he was able to trade him to Detroit, and he may have even taken a bit of a lesser return to do that, to do something solid, because the Canadiens got what they wanted out of the deal that they made with Pittsburgh, which was to get Mike Hoffman off the books, to move Rem Pitlick to a place where he'd have a better opportunity than the one he was getting in Montreal, to free up space for some younger players. They got a prospect in the deal. They got a second-round pick in 2025, which they believe is a draft that's going to be better than 2024. And, I think Ken Hughes could have held. He could have said, look, Jeff Petry's coming to Montreal until we find a better place for him, and, we'll get the best possible trade. But I don't think he wanted to put Jeff Petry in that situation, and that's why the deal was made.
Kent Hughes, from the minute he was hired by the Canadiens, came in, and I think he is so I love the guy. I really, really love the guy. I think out of all the GMs they've ever had that I've seen here in my lifetime covering the team or watching back as a fan, he's the one who most operates like a stockbroker. I haven't seen a Canadiens general manager operate like a stockbroker like this guy before. I mean, he's buying stocks, he's buying them low, he's selling them high. Sometimes he's holding on to them, and then but he's never at a loss. And he's basically sometimes trading one stock to end up getting two stocks or three stocks in return. He doesn't only deal with penny stocks; he deals with all kinds of stocks. And I think you're right. He did the Petry family a favor, but he didn't do them a favor to hurt his club. He ended up doing them a favor, but in the process, he added assets to his team. He basically stocked the cupboards with a younger player who, whether he pans out or he doesn't, and a draft pick. You save a little bit of money. It's business. He's a businessman. He's a businessman.
He is. I think that's a pretty good analogy that you came up with there. I think there was a lot of humanity in this move, which is nice to see. And it's I think maybe if Ken Hughes didn't have the experience he had as a longtime agent, maybe he'd have gone about it differently. But, you in this world, no matter what you do, if you lead with empathy, I don't think you're ever going wrong. You got to put yourself in other people's shoes, and you got to think about them, and you got to think about the way they feel about things. I know I try to do that a lot in my work. I'm sure you do too, Tony. You have to think about things from other people's perspective, and you have to care about human beings. And at the end of the day, Ken Hughes is in a position as a general manager to treat human beings somewhat as commodities. But at the same time, you don't want to lose humanity in the process. And I think this was a nice thing, and I think it'll resonate across the league. I think a lot of people will notice what Kent Hughes did here, and I don't think it's not like it's going to be majorly beneficial to the Canadiens in terms of their reputation and Kent Hughes' reputation and the type of organization they're running, but it's definitely not going to hurt them. So, at the end of the day, like I said, he got what he wanted out of this deal to begin with. He could have been greedier, and he could have traded Petry for a better return. But he traded him for a return that still helps the Canadiens and puts Petry in a situation that is much better for him and good for them. I wish them well in Detroit. That's where they've wanted to be for a long time now, and that's where they are.
So we know that when it comes to free agency, that Montreal's not the number one destination in the league. They're not number 2. Heck, they're not number 5. And let's be honest, they're probably even not in the top 10. Montreal hasn't had a lot of success with free agents over the last 15 or 20 years. Mind you, it's ironic that Jeff Petry was one of them who, when his contract was up after he was acquired, I think he could have gone to free agency. And there were a couple players who could have gone to free agency. They ended up staying here and signing here. But look, chances are you'd rather go to Vegas. Chances are you'd rather go to Dallas. Chances are you'd rather go to Anaheim. Chances are you'd rather go to San Jose. Chances are you'd rather go to Los Angeles. Chances are you'd rather go to Dallas. Chances are you'd rather go to Florida. Chances are you'd rather go to Tampa. I mean, and the list goes on and on. But by being this way with players, meeting with them, talking with them, I'm going to try and help you out. Be patient. I'm going to try and help you out. Be patient. I'm going to try and do whatever is best for you and your family. Those players end up leaving, not with a sour taste in their mouth the way some of them used to, but actually a smile on their face saying, you know what? I wasn't treated as a number. I was treated as a real human being. There was a lot of respect. And unfortunately, not a lot of employees have a good exit with their employer. Whether they're let go or they choose to walk away, there is a lack of respect more often than not. There isn't with Hughes. And this is his way of maybe taking that whole thing that Montreal is not a preferred destination, and he's trying to change it just by the way he treats people. And once again, I don't want to sound like the president of the Kent Hughes fan club.
No.
But, you know, if I didn't like what he was doing, I would tell you I didn't like what he was doing. He's doing it right, man.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree. I don't think it hurts the Canadians in this regard. Whether or not it helps them, we'll find out. There are other things that they've done that are helping them. And hiring Marty St. Louis is right at the top of the list. There are a lot of players in the league that are looking at what's going on there and saying, you know what? If I get the opportunity and they're interested, it's something I would consider when maybe they wouldn't have before. I think it did them wonders in terms of signing their own college free agents. And I think the NHL is a very small community. Everybody talks and everybody knows each other. And the word is getting out there. You know, like, will that overwhelm the issues of playing in Montreal, whether it be the pressure from the fan base and the media, or the weather, or the tax situation, or playing in Canada versus playing in the States, or playing, you know, here versus going to a market where there's no state tax? There's a lot of things that factor into it. Ultimately, you know, a lot of players who get into the situation where they have the opportunity to choose where they want to play want to be somewhere where they believe they have a chance to win.
Yeah,
you know, that's pretty paramount. And they want to be also in a situation where they're playing for a coach that will value them for who they are as a player, get the best out of them, and give them opportunity. And then all those other things come into the equation. You know, you could list them in whatever order you want. I guess it really depends on the person. But if Montreal was lower down on the list, and I think we'd acknowledge that every market in Canada was lower down on the list, especially through the pandemic and coming out of it, I think it's rising. I think it's rising because of stuff like Kent Hughes is doing with Jeff Petry, but really rising because of what Marty St. Louis is doing with the Canadians.
A shout out to Murphy Clinic, an aesthetic clinic specializing in medical aesthetic care. They offer permanent laser hair removal as well as a wide range of treatments for skin problems such as acne, rosacea, fine lines, and more. They currently have 2 clinics, one located in Montreal Shop Angus and the second on the North Shore in Terrebonne. They're also opening soon in Quebec City. Visit murphyclinic.ca or on Instagram at Murphy Clinic. Listen, this wasn't in the plans to actually talk about this because I was going to stick to the Montreal Canadiens. But having said that, Petry traded to the Detroit Red Wings, a team that is supposed to be rebuilding. You would think that they were probably a little bit more ahead of the Canadiens in terms of the rebuild because they had started before. They do have a couple of young defensemen, but I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised with Petry becoming a Red Wing at his age. I totally understand why they did it. Number one, They're probably going to pair him with Sherratt, so they're thinking there's going to be some chemistry there because, of course, at times they played together. And number two, they probably bring him in and say, you know what, we're going to need to surround some of these young players that we have on D with some veterans. Are you surprised by Petry going to Detroit?
Not really, no. Like, I think Detroit has always been interested in the player so long as the price was right and the term was right. And now they get him at 2 years at $2.34 million. That's a good price and a good situation. He's had some injury issues over the last couple of years, so we'll see how that plays out. I think from their perspective, they could do worse than to have Sherratt and Petry as potentially even a third pairing or even a second pairing. Guys with experience, it's a good thing to have in their locker room, and he's going to have the hometown pride of playing in Detroit, where his dad was an illustrious baseball player, and, they have a home there, right? So, Detroit's an interesting team. I thought they'd take a bigger step than they did last year. I think they'll take a bigger step this year. DeBrincat's there now. They've got some really good young players on the rise. They've got a third line of monsters, some Swedish kids. Soderblom sticks out.
Yeah,
some real good prospects developing. Thought that was an interesting layer of this deal, actually getting a right-handed Swedish defenseman back in it. You're looking, and Kent Hughes mentioned this in his call. Man, I don't think any team has drafted better out of that country than Detroit has. And turns out the pro scouting staff in Montreal was keen on this player that came back, in Lindström. I don't think anybody expects it's going to be Lindström, but they're looking at him as a guy that could be an NHL player. So it'll be interesting to see how this all develops. But Detroit, not surprised, and really great for Jeff Petry and his family.
But at the same time, and I know what you're getting at, right? Detroit Red Wings Swedish amateur scout, who's now the director of European scouting for the Red Wings, is Håkan Andersson. He's the guy that Henrik Zetterberg and Franzen, and there have been several that were drafted by him out of Sweden. But at the same time, Thomas Holmstrom is another one, by the way.
What a beauty he was.
Yeah, he was a beauty. But at the same time, if he sees something in Lindström, I don't think they're making this deal for veteran Jeff Petry. Now, it doesn't mean that Lindstrom's not going to pan out, but I think what it means is Detroit doesn't think that he will.
Well, they were okay with losing him in the deal, right? So,
well, I know, but when you're losing him for Jeff Petry at his age, it's because you don't think he's going to pan out, or else you're not making that move, are you? I mean, it's not like the Detroit.
I don't know. I haven't spoken to them, but again, obviously they were okay with losing the player in the deal. So
but
we'll see. We're not going to build him up to be a superstar or anything like that.
No,
but it might be a player that's coming back. We'll find out. I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, no. He might be a player. You're right, but it's not like the Detroit Red Wings were Jeff Petry away from winning the Stanley Cup. So chances are they think that he's not going to fulfill that potential that probably they saw in him. The beauty of the sport is only time will tell, and it's up to him. Let's hear from Kent Hughes earlier today on his Zoom call regarding Gustav Lindström.
Gustav Lindström's concerned. Our pro guys like him. They feel like he's a really smart puck-moving defenseman, that he still has a lot of room to grow in his game. I think the number that they threw out was he was about 70% of what they believe his potential is. And he's young. He's 24 years of age. He was a high draft pick. He's a Swedish player, and Detroit's had a lot of success in that country over the years, drafting wise. So we're hopeful that Gustav can come and add an element to our team, and we'll see where it takes us.
All right, and his thoughts on the trade, and I believe you were the one who asked him, Eric. So let's hear his thoughts. We should get it here. There we go.
Want to get your thoughts on how you feel your roster is equipped to handle an uber competitive division and conference, and what you think the future holds for the Canadians this year.
Well, listen, we do have an overly competitive division, or uber competitive, and I don't think that's going to change here in the near future. I think it has been for some time, if you really look at it, right, where for a period of years you had Tampa, Boston, and Toronto It's not like any of those teams are going anywhere, and now we've got the Buffaloes and Detroits and Ottawas and Montreals, trying to knock the door down here and climb into a top 3 spot in the division. Do I think we're ready? I think on paper the answer is no. But I think I said that last year at the start of the season. I'm an optimist, and we're going to let things play out, and there's a reason they play the games. And I think we're a better team this year than we were last year. But we've got a lot of work to do to become the team that we think we need to be.
All right, there you have it. Kent Hughes was not going to go as far as saying that his team is going to make the playoffs. Do I think we're going to be better than a year ago? Yes. Do I think we're quite there yet? No, but the game is played on the ice, so we're going to have to wait and see. But all right, okay, saying basically what you just said. Detroit has success in drafting players from Sweden. Our scouts like him. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we can bring up his player chart. Okay, there you have it. Gustav Lindström, who was drafted 2nd round, 38th overall in 2017. 6'2" right-handed defenseman who played for Frölunda. That's a pretty good program there in Sweden. And then, like the Red Wings usually do with the American Hockey League team, Grand Rapids, has played with Grand Rapids over the past couple of years. A total of about 58 games or so, but has played with the Detroit Red Wings for the last couple of years as well. So, and a couple of years before that, he played with Grand Rapids. 36 games, 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points, 20 penalty minutes. Was a -16. It was a -12 a year ago. We have to keep in mind, however, that Detroit is not a very strong team. So, where do you see, based on what you're hearing, I know you said you don't know a lot about the player, but the bid that you did hear, Eric, where would you see Gustav Lindström on the depth chart?
Probably in Laval, but he's coming into a competition with who exactly? David Savard, Jonathan Kovacevic, Justin Barron, Chris Weidman. It's not like there's zero opportunity for him to pierce his way through the right side of the Canadiens defense right now. He comes to camp and plays great. He's got over 100 games of NHL experience, which is not something I could have told you before he was included in this trade. And that's rare because I like to think I know everybody in the NHL, but there's a couple that have slipped through the cracks that I don't maybe see enough. And I didn't watch a lot of Detroit last year, so it makes sense. But yeah, we'll see. Like the good news.
You talked about David Savard. Excuse me, Eric. You talked about David Savard. He's got 2 years left on a contract at $3.5 million. I don't know if you agree with me, but I think that next year will be his last full season with the Montreal Canadiens.
It could be a stretch saying it'll be a full season for him. We really don't know.
Well, usually players are traded when they have either a year left on their contract or at the trade deadline of the final year of their contract, right? He's got 2 years left on his deal.
Yeah, but he's the type of player that I think has tremendous value with a year left on his deal. And I think the type of value that Joel Edmondson could have had he not had the injury situations that he had.
Yeah, you're right about that, because if Edmondson was healthy, chances are he was going to go.
Add in the fact that Savard is a right-handed defenseman. Now, Savard has value to the Canadiens too. So long as his value to the Canadiens is higher than what it would be in the market, he'll remain a Montreal Canadian. But I think as we get closer and closer to March, which thankfully we're very far away from that, and it's still summer and we're not in hockey season and we're all enjoying our lives here. Not that we don't enjoy hockey season. It's going to become more and more of a topic of conversation. I'm quite certain of that. And we'll see. I like I said, nothing's imminent with David Savard. He's not going anywhere. But he's a player that at 1 year left with $3.5 million on the right side, and what he's been able to do in Montreal and the way he's played, not a perfect player, obviously, but he's been quite valuable.
Yeah.
There will be teams out there that look at him and say that would be a really great addition for us going on a playoff run if the Canadiens are not where they hope to be by the time we get to the trade deadline.
So the Canadiens acquired Casey DeSmith and Jeff Petry 9 days ago. For those who thought that they were going to be Montreal Canadiens, of course, with each passing day that they have not been introduced, there hasn't been a press conference or anything like that. You haven't heard either of them speak. you started to get the feeling that they would be gone, and Petry was gone earlier today. So now on to Casey DeSmith, and Kent Hughes was asked about him. Let's hear what he had to say.
De 4 gardiens, c'est sûr qu'il vient à Montréal, puis il tombe dans une organisation où il y a 4 gardiens qui veulent jouer dans la Ligue nationale. Alors, j'ai dit à Casey, écoute, sois patient. L'idée, c'est pas de... je cherche le mot un peu en français, mais de bury you dans la Ligue américaine. Alors, on va voir, on va continuer à regarder les choses qui peuvent... les chances pour l'échanger ou faire de quoi pour changer un peu les choses, mais ça prend une patience avec le marché des gardiens parce que ça ne bouge pas si vite que ça.
All right, okay. He said something to the effect of, we find ourselves with 4 goalies who can play. I had a chance to speak with Casey, and I told him, hey, listen, I know that there's a logjam here and stuff like that, but it's, we're not looking to bury you in the American Hockey League. It's just going to take a little bit of patience on your part, whether it's a trade or something else materializes. But you know what? Just, a little bit of patience here, and we'll keep you abreast of everything. It sounds like the plan is to trade him with leaving an opening that, hey, it's also possible that other goalies get moved and he stays here, but it sounds like the plan is to trade him. Is that your read into the situation as well?
Yeah, listen, before the press conference happened, I tweeted out that I don't necessarily think Kent Hughes will be wheeling and dealing, but I do believe that he's not done here and that Casey DeSmith could be traded. Not a guarantee, but the chance. As Kent said, the goaltending market is not exactly fruitful right now. You're not going to see a bunch of goalies change teams between now and the start of the season. Is there a team out there that could guarantee Casey DeSmith an NHL position because he's an NHL goaltender? I think that if there is, there's a likelihood that you'll see him move to that team. Whether or not there is up for debate. I think we're looking at a 50-50 situation here that Casey DeSmith could be at Montreal Canadiens training camp or he could be traded. And we'll see where it goes. The other factor is Kent Hughes talked a lot about and was asked a lot about long-term IR and Carey Price and not wanting to go into long-term IR in the offseason because it creates a situation where you have to manage the cap to the point where you could have overages that leak into the following year. Yeah. They're not looking to tie up their cap for the following year.
Uh-huh.
So, right now, working out the numbers, Casey DeSmith, offhand, I haven't looked at it today, but I think is it $1.8 million?
It is.
Yeah, so there you go. There's a possibility to create that flexibility and also alleviate a bit of the logjam. But I don't think the Canadiens will be upset if Casey DeSmith finds himself at Canadiens camp and makes a push for a spot on the roster. It creates flexibility for them to do different things with their goaltenders. So we'll see where that all goes. But as I tweeted before Kent's press conference today, I think there's a chance that Casey DeSmith is going to get traded.
And it creates internal competition, which is never a bad thing. On to Paul Byron. He was asked about him, and I think he confirmed what pretty much everyone was thinking. Let's hear from him.
Comprendre que c'était probablement terminé pour Paul Byron. Est-ce que ça a été confirmé?
Oui.
Donc, lui, il a confirmé il vous a confirmé sa retraite récemment, quoi? Ou?
Je pense que je ne sais pas si je ne crois pas vraiment mieux de laisser à Paul. C'est sûr que son contrat est terminé. De qu'est-ce que je crois, Paul n'a pas de plan de déménager de Montréal, mais j'imagine qu'il aimerait lui-même annoncer sa retraite.
Et puis il avait parlé, il semblait être intéressé de garder un poste avec l'équipe. Je ne sais pas dans quelle capacité. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous avez discuté?
C'est quelque chose qu'on va discuter cette année. On avait parlé d'avoir la chance de s'asseoir ensemble au mois de septembre.
All right, there you have it. Kent Hughes says, listen, his contract is up. He's, based on what I know, he doesn't want to move from Montreal, so it sounds like it's over. At the same time, he says, I'm going to leave it up to Paul to personally announce himself his own retirement. Then he was asked, well, it looks like he's working for the club or he wants to work for the club. That's what we've been, been made to believe. And he said, look, we haven't talked yet, and we're going to talk sometime in September. We made it a point to touch base in September to talk about, Paul and, furthering his career with the Montreal Canadiens, probably in a different role, obviously. So, nothing new there. I mean, I think it's the first time the general manager talks about it, but I think it's safe to say that we all thought that Paul Byron was done, right?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. He had hip surgery, hoped that it would work out, came back, and it just didn't work out. And I hope he's living a pain-free existence. Like, he has young kids and he's very involved in their lives and he's around the team. He was around all last year. And I think all last season, Paul Byron was really soaking in the opportunity to be around the team as someone who was under contract, and really just, have his family around being a Montreal Canadian and knowing that it could be the end for him. And you never want to see players not be able to go out on their own terms, especially a guy like him and the way he fought to have a career in the NHL and what he was able to do with it. If it's of any consolation to Paul, that the lasting image of his career will be that exceptional goal that he scored against Toronto in the playoffs.
Short-handed on the breakaway, falling down to his knees.
You could put that image up next to the Rocket shaking hands with the Bruins and all kinds of iconic images of Canadiens history. That was a goal for the ages, and there is a picture of him, from his knees with the puck lifting off his stick. And in my years covering the Canadiens, this will be the 16th. I haven't come across 5 people who are better than that guy. He really is an exceptional human being. He was profound when he spoke with us and really interesting and just a good person who everybody loves. And I think he can have a real influence on the younger generation of Montreal Canadiens. And I think that's why a role with the organization makes sense. I tweeted my own speculation, my own opinion, that I think player development is a perfect fit for him, and he would be a really nice complement to a team that is already, I think, quite exceptional, which is a huge turnaround from where we were a couple of years ago with what the Canadiens were doing from a development standpoint. But he'd be the icing on the cake there.
He could teach the guys how to skate. I'll tell you that. It sounds like a pretty obvious one to me, but
I don't know if you could teach that, but he can can sure teach guys how to grind out tough situations.
We know that making it to the show, making it to the National Hockey League, it's an extremely hard thing to do. I mean, there's a reason when they talk about, 0.5% and then making it and stuff like that. It's probably even tougher to become a professional athlete, maybe more mentally than anything else, because the mental grind and the ups and downs are really unbelievable. There's something about small players, right? There's something about small players where not too many people believe that they can make it to the show. Already it's tough to begin with, but the fact that they're not big and they lack size, and most of them don't seem to be drafted, and a lot of them end up being up on the waivers. We just talked about Byron, and Marty St. Louis, another guy, right? And Daniel Briere was another guy. Like a lot of these guys, they don't get drafted. They end up on waivers. A lot of people don't believe in them. Those are all hockey players all have character, but those especially with that kind of profile, man, they exude character. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, Brendan Gallagher is another example, a 5th-round pick and a guy that people bet against and continue to bet against throughout his career. And there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, Brendan Gallagher, you're never going to see the old Brendan Gallagher again." And I would never make that bet. I understand Gallagher is limited in terms of what he'll be able to do. I don't expect to see him scoring 30-goal seasons again. Would I sit here and tell you I think it's impossible? No, because I know what kind of determination Brendan Gallagher is, and I know what he puts into what he does, and I know how much it means to him. And I think, it's funny. There were portions of last year before he got hurt where, Marty St. Louis was working so hard on him, with him on completing his game and evolving his game. Yeah. And there was so much evidence of it working, despite the fact that he was getting not a lot of luck when it comes to scoring. I don't think it's impossible that Brendan Gallagher will have another 20-goal season in him. I would not sit here betting my money on 30, but I definitely would not say I would definitely not bet against the guy ever. And I think you're right. There's something to do with those guys.
Yeah.
They have a little inferiority complex or whatever it is, whatever they pull on for motivation. I think Brendan has always said he wants to prove the people right that believe in him. But I think all these guys have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, and that's how they get to be who they are. And I look at, Cole Caulfield too as a smaller guy, and a lot of people said, well, will he be able to score in the NHL at that level? And I think he's proving very quickly that he's able to do it.
Yeah, well, with me, I don't look at gray areas. It's either black or white. I would, and if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be wrong, and I'll be the first one to admit that I was. But I would bet against Brendan scoring with any kind of regularity, because as much as small players are very smart players and they have all kinds of character.
You don't think he could put 20 up again?
20's feasible. 20's feasible, but I wouldn't bet on it. And, it's a goal every 4 games on average.
I would bet on him scoring 20 goals again.
It's very, very.
You want to make a friendly bet?
No
Pick one of your sponsors. I'll take you for dinner at one of those places if I'm wrong.
Well, chances are I wouldn't pay there anyway, so let's pick somewhere else. Okay, but anyway, no, listen, we'll go for a we'll go for a steak somewhere. But here's the challenge with Gallagher, and I don't have to tell you this, I know you already know this, and small players is, the car, once it starts going in the garage for repairs, it ends up going in the garage for repairs often. And that, I find, is the difference between putting up numbers and not putting up numbers.
I don't know if that's exclusive to small players. I think you could say that about just about anybody.
Yeah, it's a contact sport, and a lot of players get hurt, but it just seems like it's funny because it seems like it's either really, really small players or really, really big players that take a little bit longer to recover. I don't know if that's even true or false, or if there's any fact behind that. It just seems that way to me. But anyway.
Probably not. It's probably more perception than it is reality, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So the Canadians end up saving, when all this is said and done, about $1.4 million. I know we talked about it that, they could have kept Jeff Petry, could have played some really good hockey here. They could have ended up trading him and getting more than this, but they want to get the word around the league that they're going to try and help players as much as they can, and are willing to improve their team. But maybe if, they could have improved it a little bit more, but not help the player, rather help the player. You talked about possibility of more moves. If there is another move outside of Casey DeSmith and maybe Chris Weidman, what do you think it would be?
I don't know that it'll necessarily be a player coming back here that'll be on the roster. Could the Canadians potentially take on a contract and gain an asset? That's something I could see them doing. They're one of the few teams that will have the space to do that when the time comes. Maybe not necessarily in the offseason, but as soon as the season starts and Carey Price is on LTI. So I don't think that there's a specific target in terms of players coming in here, but there are a lot of teams that are really tight up against it and strapped. And they are still in the business here of collecting assets, not necessarily ones that they'll use draft picks, if they acquire them, but they might move those assets at a later date. So I think they're one of the teams that you look at and say, okay, once the season starts, $5 million goes on LTI, and there's space there that if they need to acquire a player or two that maybe is also in an LTI situation, or I can see that.
What do you think's happening with this whole Logan Mailloux situation? I mean, Gary Bettman was supposed to have a conversation with Mailloux and then let members of the media know and the Canadians know if Logan Mailloux can be reinstated in the National Hockey League, and it just seems like this is taking its time. Do you think the time that it's taking is already predetermined in terms of we just got to show people that we're taking our time with this because we're going to take this very seriously?
No, I don't think so. I think when the time I think it's about where Logan Mailloux is going to be come fall. There's no rush to get him cleared to play in the NHL if he's not going to be playing in the NHL.
I got it. So if the Montreal Canadiens would say to Gary Bettman, listen, Gary, this guy came into camp and we think he's going to make our team. Can you let us know? And at that point, Gary Bettman.
At that point, I think he'll be cleared. Logan Mailloux, all the evidence so far is that he's gone with the program that the Canadiens have set forth and the London Knights set forth, and a pretty strong rehabilitation. I don't want to get my words twisted around here, excusing anything he did. What he did was inexcusable. But at the end of the day, from everything I've heard, it's my expectation that he'll be cleared when the time comes for him to play in the NHL.
I think so too. Yeah,
I don't think there'll be a hurdle here.
I think that's a good way of looking at it. As a matter of fact, Gary Bettman doesn't have to rush into a decision. If he says now that Logan Mailloux is cleared and Logan Mailloux doesn't make the Montreal Canadiens, then he's giving a decision maybe at least a year ahead of time. So he'll wait till the end of camp. And then if the Canadiens say, Gary, this guy's going to make our team, at that point he gets cleared.
I will say this. Logan Mailloux is going to be a story in camp because of the depth on the right side, which is not exceptionally strong.
You're right.
Because of who he is as a prospect in terms of his hockey playing ability.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sit here and say, okay, he's ready for the NHL. That'll be up to Logan Mailloux to prove.
Well, he's got a profile on right defense that they don't have, Eric.
He is very likely to start the year in the American Hockey League, if only for the fact that he needs to play games.
Yes.
He hasn't played enough games in the last few years, and there's a lot for him to learn through that process. But I will tell you that the Canadiens think very highly of the hockey player, just talking about hockey, okay? And also, Rob Ramage, who has followed him very closely and been very in touch and very involved in his process, really thinks he's matured a great deal and has said that to the media members. But the Canadiens think he's going to be a real player. And I think he's going to be a real player too. Whether or not that's this fall in the NHL is going to be a storyline, because watch out when he comes to camp. And I can tell you that there's defensemen on the Montreal Canadiens that see him as competition. I can tell you that right now. They were impressed with him a year ago, and they know that he's coming. So we'll see. That's going to be a really compelling storyline as we get closer and closer to the puck dropping, which it can't happen soon enough, because I don't know about you, I think training camp is about 10 days too long.
Always is, yeah.
I really wish they would change
Too many games. Nobody cares.
Too many days. It's really, anyways. I'm not going to win this battle, but.
When's the golf tournament? Is it on the 11th?
I haven't even looked.
Yeah.
Don't even think about it.
Yeah, Monday's the.
I start thinking about hockey.
Usually a Monday or a Tuesday,
I really start thinking about it once we're back. Like until then, I try to soak up every moment and live in the moment. And then we get back, and I'm excited to be back. But I don't sit here with great anticipation before training camp rolls around, because once it comes, it's too long, and everybody just wants the same thing: for the season to start sooner, for the season to end sooner, for more teams to be involved in the playoffs with 32 of them in the league. Everybody but one guy seems to want it that way. So, yeah, it's what it is.
You talked about the preseason being too long. I know that not everybody agrees with me here. Wouldn't be the first time. It's not going to be the last. I personally think that the season lasts too long too. I think that 82 games is too much. But anyway, I understand that's what the owners want, and that's what the commissioner wants, and they want to maximize. But I just think that sometimes less is more, and I'd love.
I think it would be so cool to have some sort of feasibility study on this, because I think shortening the preseason, shortening the regular season by 4 games, adding a couple of teams to the playoffs, having the playoffs play out, and the Stanley Cup awarded at the end of May.
Yes.
I think whatever they lose at the gate in terms of cutting out preseason games and regular season games, they'd make up for in fans being engaged longer throughout the season, more fan bases being engaged by a couple teams being added to the playoff picture, and not just fan bases of those teams, fan bases of any teams that are on the bubble that could be those last two teams. You're talking about engaging another 4 to 6 teams right there, and the quality of play in general improving by a great deal. I think it would be a really interesting feasibility study.
That's my main reason behind everything. Shorten the preseason, start the season earlier. I'd be willing to knock off 2 games per month personally. What's going to end up happening is you're going to have a lot less of 3 and 4s and 4s and 6s. You're going to have a lot less travel. By having less travel and less 3 and 4s and less 4 and 6s, the players are fresher, which means they're going to less chance of injury, and they're going to be a lot more productive, which means you're going to have a lot better games, and you're going to have a lot more entertaining hockey. You're going to have a lot more highlights, and the Stanley Cup goes out by the end of May, and this way in June, you don't have to stay locked up in your house in the second week of June still watching the Cup to come out. You can actually take a walk in Little Italy, and you can have a gelato.
There's at least like 6 games a year where a team is on the second half of back-to-back or 3 and 4 nights playing against a team that's been rested for 2 days, and you're not getting a good game. You are not getting a good game. Like it's impossible. So anyways.
Eric, when you see the schedule and you already see the team's going to be playing their 4th game in 6 nights, you know already, like you said, you're not going to get a good game because there's even travel included in all that. They're tired. It's
impossible. It's impossible to do. Like, these guys are the best conditioned athletes in the world, but they're not machines. Like, it's not possible to play a team that's rested for 2 days when you've been on the West Coast playing 3 games in 4 nights and you come home and like a team's sitting there waiting for you on the second half of back to back. Like, you're not going to win.
And Eric, for those who are going to say, but you know what? They need to have those amount of games because there's X amount of revenue that has to come in and this and that, whatever. Look, and now once again, a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I need you to hear me out, okay? I really want to have a shorter schedule, okay? I don't want the players to have advertising all over their jerseys and be like a moving billboard. But if it means that by having less games, if the owners can compensate with less revenue by actually having the advertising on the jerseys, me personally, I would be all for it.
But even if they weren't going down that path, which inevitably they are, I don't know if we'll ever see the day where the entire jersey's covered or anything like that. But even if they don't go down that path, I think what's the interesting debate is whether or not the increase in the quality of the game makes up for the revenue lost at the gate by shaving down the schedule.
Yeah.
So we'll never know or at least we won't know so long as Gary Bettman is running the league, because I don't think he has any interest in doing it. And whether or not some owners or governors have expressed their interest, it's not an overwhelming majority of them that are interested. Not expanding the playoff picture to me, we could talk about all this. I mean, cut preseason in half. Like, honestly, cut training camp to preseason to 2 weeks. Period.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody from players to management to coaches, except for the owners, if they're really concerned about the gate revenue that they get out of preseason hockey, like, I don't think anybody's debating that. But, like, honestly, like, not adding a play-in with 32 teams in the league and arguing that it waters down what is the greatest playoff thing. Like, we love playoff hockey. Give me more of it.
Yeah.
I don't think we're getting a lesser quality if 2 teams that are ranked, 9th and 10th respectively in their conference with how tight the league is now and the parity that's been created, we're watering down the quality of playoff hockey. I think if anything, we are engaging.
Yeah.
Like I said, not just those 2 teams' fan bases. We are engaging 4 to 6 extra fan bases per conference for that race. And eliminating more teams from tanking. There's nobody who could argue with me. People could argue with me about it. I don't think anybody's winning the debate that the league wouldn't be better off expanding the playoff picture. To me, it's a no-brainer at this point. And if they expand another couple teams, which seems to be on the horizon with Houston and Salt Lake City.
Because less teams will want to tank at that point because they'll have a chance of getting into the playoffs, what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
But you're engaging so many more fans for a portion of the season where they've checked out.
Speaking of which, I think that if you go in the playoffs, the rule should be 1 versus 16 and 2 versus 15 and 3 versus 14. And I understand why they don't do it, because if the two conferences are not balanced, at that point they're going to want to do the 1 versus 8 and the 2 versus 7.
I don't like it, but give me 1-8. Give me 1-8-2-7. I think that's a format that makes a lot more sense. But I'm not going to argue with the current format. We've seen some great playoff hockey recently. I know that I was at a Board of Governors meeting and asked Gary Bettman from a revenue standpoint why they wouldn't consider expanding the playoff picture. And he felt that he said that there would be no guarantee that revenue would increase as a result of increasing the playoff. And to me, that doesn't make any sense.
And the current format,
didn't have a rebuttal opportunity.
The current format right now, of course, is that the first place team in the conference will play versus the last wild card or the 8th seed, and the second place team will end up playing versus the second wild card, and then of course the two teams from the two divisions, the second and third place team of each division will end up playing each other up. But they've had so many different formats over the years, and I don't know.
You think if the format was the traditional one, 1-8-2-7, you think the Leafs would have a Stanley Cup by now?
You mean because they would have avoided Tampa?
I mean, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy what they've had to go through to get through the playoffs. I mean, Montreal, that was one thing, but
I've always thought that the Toronto Maple Leafs would win a Stanley Cup with what they were trying to do, and they haven't won it yet. And in the end, if they don't, I'll say, hey, you know what? The Leafs, but they still give their fans pretty entertaining hockey, of course, by having players like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and Nylander, and the list goes on. And of course, they added Tavares. But I mean, adding Tavares, I'm not so sure was the right thing to do at the time, but he did have a good season last season. Eric, we've gone pretty long. This has been a lot of fun. We usually go longer during the season, but because it's summer, I mean, let's stop it right now. Thanks, Eric. We'll talk to you soon, my man.
Pleasure. Take care, Tony.
Great stuff as always. There you have it. If you like what we're doing, like it, share it with your friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. And if you're going to leave us a review on Apple, I'm hoping you can leave us a 5-star review. And if you didn't like the podcast, leave us a 5-star review anyway, because I'll get to put more food on the table. And we all need to eat in my house. Probably me not as much, because I've done my share for a couple of lifetimes. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. It is the Sick Podcast. We'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same place, weeknights between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. For Shane Gaumont at Master Control, he is Gaumont, and I am Marinaro. Usually when I talk, I get paid. Another night.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaVie.tv, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.